So the game theme was arcade, and that immediately made me think of Asteroids because that's a favorite of mine in the past with some physics and stuff, but with a little twist here. So you take your ship, fly it around. Definitely don't hit the asteroids. Don't hit the asteroids. We go over that way. That way's good. That way's good. Okay, yeah. So the twist is we're going to be dragging some other people around because we got a fun little name pun here. Asteroids. It's like screaming, like ah. So you drag them real close to the asteroids. They go ah, and these spawn out. These are um, physical screams. They then break up into bits, and you collect those. You collect the bits of the screams. So you're incentivized to drive close, but not too close to the asteroids. You get those things. That's ammunition, the stuff that you pick up, the broken up bits, ammunition. Um, it's also, well, okay, it's, the ammunition's for blasting, obviously. Um, but it's also accelerant. So you go faster, get around stuff, pull more things. It'll be good. So ammunition, accelerant, and you blast and you fly and you win at the asteroids. So coming from that, then there were plenty of versions before this that were just rocks, just trying to figure out those systems, but I didn't really start recording until this. Um, Idea was for a little bit more moment to moment, I'll say, fun navigating with the steering direction mattering. Um, Plenty of bugs early. This one seemed to be something physics because I was allowing the rocks to push the ship a little bit. Um, and our pretty ridiculous engine that's just a colored card just to give you some sense of motion. I can say at this point actually already it's I've made the decision to never move the ship and instead move the world around it. So this is actually already built that system to be able to sort of tag objects as movable things, and then they, instead of the ship getting thrust, actually everything else gets opposite thrust whenever you're moving your ship, and the illusion works. But it did cause quite a few other sort of issues or things I had to learn about the Unreal Engine later on. Here we have um, basically, like, I've learned about particle systems and how to do some of that, and I've also learned how to do a dynamic texture. And so both of those basically just prompted me to update my game and go, oh, okay, can I use that? A pretty common theme for later too, actually, is like particle effects and other things that I learned immediately turning into something. So there's a fuel bar that's really just a number changing a shader, and then some fun with the engine particle effects, which is also coming about from a change in design, because I realized if my design is going to have my ship pulling other people, the thrust shouldn't probably go straight into their face. But in any case, this seems to work, is pretty fun. Cool thing to learn. um, this actually is a jump where in between we've iterated on, is pulling anything actually fun? And it turns out not really, at least not steering, certainly not with that shape. It was very hard to keep anything that you're picking up and dragging around making any sort of physical sense. This is also a change that's recognizing that the target hardware is going to be an arcade machine actually, and so that maps a lot more like a D-pad, which really only has the side directions. So this just feels cleaner, and keeps the shape much more compact while being as big as it can be without, visually, but not in the way of stuff if we're going to be dragging things. So here we have a background actually, and a big change in lighting. So this will improve over time, but um, starting to try to figure out what the background could look like, and starting to try to figure out actually a thing that I didn't realize was even a mistake. I basically just had broken lighting in all my previous versions. Other thing that should be obvious is the rocks are now rocks. Um, we're still not doing anything to break the ship, but um, we have these giant things here, and where we've sort of spent a lot of time working on the art for the textures and that, and so getting myself a lot more confident that I know I can make those textures, I can make those shaders, I can make it look okay, and I can figure out the rendering pipeline and what all that looks like. much more obvious here should be the background, and then we're trying to parallax it to give a sense, more of a sense of depth. And so that what that means is like the front, moving much more, the dust that you're right on top of and the rocks that you're interacting with. But then there's some kind of background to give you more of a sense of place rather than just some kind of weird void. Um, some pretty obvious visual things there that aren't so good, but it's a good first step. The next major thing to move into is a menu. And so this was kind of learning that and trying to figure out how to get it to work, especially with the controller, was a bit tricky. But that's really the goal coming up, is we need to have a full game loop, which is going to mean we're going to stop being able to smash into these rocks pretty soon, because we do need the player to be able to die, and that then loops you around, with now the game design kind of moving into well, I'll say away from the drag things near rocks, and instead just drag things, protect them, and stay away from the rocks. So you're going to be using those things in powers and leaning much, much more into a sort of snake asteroids. That's in fact what you can see here in the menu, saying I'm going to Ahhssteroids and not asteroids. It's a change. Somewhat, to some degree, I kept the old one just as, I don't know, some kind of sacrifice to myself on, well, I do hope to make that one because I like that other version, the pitched version, but recognizing that what I was making is more viable for the time period, and honestly just pretty fun, once you start seeing the little balls snaking around behind you, the other fellowships following you around. um, it's sort of clearly more engaging immediately to try and go get one more and keep getting longer. So it was clear this was the right path, especially for the time given. What we move into next is, well, that full game loop, being able to get broken and um, restart. So we're getting a lot closer to be able to ship something that is quote unquote done. Wouldn't have everything you necessarily want, but is done in the sense of you can play it, someone can do it. As we saw there, there's a little bit of loopiness on the little pickup, the fellowship there, and again, so plenty of bugs there, and that's, these videos are hiding to some degree the amount of time debugging that, the amount of fun programmer frustration on figuring those things out and rewriting whole systems on how those even connect and work and update themselves. I think we see our first power up, different ability fellowship. Um, this one, just being an energy one, seemed like the simplest thing was to take a regular one and make it help you out. So in this case, your boost movement spends some energy, and that thing just helps you to recharge faster, effectively doubling the amount you can get on your own little ring. We're also seeing just minor but cumulative improvements in terms of how the rocks spawn. Lots of little sort of updates based on testing on what sizes they are, what ratios of those sizes, how often they spawn, where are they in front of you, how does the dust spawn, and all just trying to come to a place that sort of feels right, which is very nebulous, but does just need all that iteration. So we're trying to do that kind of in amongst the other feature builds and the other ads and everything. Um, but at this point, we should be, we already know we have something fairly engaging. It's fun to go try and get one more. It's sort of random enough or interesting enough to interact with these rocks. Uh, you can feel it, like when they break off and you really want to go get them back, and then that gets you in more trouble. So we finally have a score screen. Again, just fleshing out the thing that I'd call quote unquote complete. Even more power-ups start showing up. Um, Really, it's nice to feel like I'd set up systems correctly ahead of time to make it so that it was really only hours, maybe less, but pretty much never more than the amount of time it took to think about and then implement whatever the new thing was. So in this case, some kind of shield. But um, as was the case in lots of things, is actually like any work I sort of prefaced with, "Oh, but you get to play with particle effects," and so this is a case of that, where I got to have fun making the particle effect and then figure out how am I going to make the thing actually push and do that math. even more. So all sorts of new stuff I'm trying out. How to get particles to play off of other objects, and then also just the way that interacts with them to cause them to stop and then restart later. I think we even have the third type, or I guess that's fourth type. Um, so we've got the shield one, we got the time warp one that's being activated again. We've also got like a sort of black hole or maybe attachment one, so the lighter purple. About to use it here, yeah. The game would like to get to a place where it already does a little bit, but it would like to get to a place where it matters where your links are, where the ships are that are following you, and how you loop them around, so that you can maybe care about the way you're flying in a deeper way. Um, Ideas there include shields that, instead of being circles, are some kind of link in between each other. We have probably one of the last additions to the score screen, which is this ability to enter your name, or whatever little old arcade name you like, and go look back at it. We're just continuing to add quality of life on how they attach, making that more stable. Again, the spawning and everything else, getting much less obviously noticeable changes, but changes that, in my opinion, are iterating on the kind of stability, the fun, what the world feels like for these objects that are sort of otherwise randomly spawning, the stuff you're interacting with, and how the physics works. So slight number tweaks. One of the last, at least very obvious visual upgrades here is just yet again playing around with particle effects, attaching a sort of like evaporation stuff coming off the ice ones to really sell that they're different, to give even more stuff to let you feel motion on screen, and potentially some challenge in that it can obscure your own ship or other smaller rocks going through those tails of mist, dust. We've also sort of started playing around with a bit of I forget what to call it, but something like a dead zone of where the player movement is. So the camera is not quite locking the player to the center. It allows you to move a bit towards the edge. The main intention here being that we want to be able to see more of the tail when it starts getting longer. And then right at pretty much the last day of the deadline to get the game in at all for the fellowship to get it into the Unreal Fest later in September, I took on the ambitious attempt to add a second player. I felt like it was important from kind of some playtesting. I really wanted the ability for a person to be playing this, but to be able to hand a controller to someone else and have that person, probably like a younger sibling or something, or just someone else that's there or doesn't have to be there. Point is, they can interact. They really can't hurt you. They can only help. And supposed to be a fun little surprise also in the arcade setup at the convention that this might be shown in, where you might just think this game is single player, and then potentially have a moment of hype when you realize, wait, someone else has to jump in here and start helping. Or like I said, it's not that they have to, but you do have a little bit of power in this thing. So fun little drone, has all the powers that the ship could possibly have. Runs out of its own fuel, though, as we see here. It has to go fly back, charge back up at the place that it spawned out of, and it can respawn. So as long as the main person keeps um, that bit there, you get a second player kind of able to just fly around, do whatever they want. So like I'm saying, I think perfect for something like a parent or older sibling playing with a younger sibling, where you can just hand the controller. They can't hurt you. It's just fun.